SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Welcome back to another iGaming Daily episode, where in part 1, the payment expert team will be analysing the newly introduced APP fraud regulations and what this means for both company and customer. And in part 2, SBC Americas editor Jessica Welman and SBC VP of Latin America Relationships, Lucía Mouriño, will be recapping their experience so far at the G2E event in Las Vegas. But first, a word from our sponsor, Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. As a special offer, Optimove is offering new clients a free first month when they buy Optimove. For more information and claim the free month, go to optimove.com/SBC. Links will be also left in the podcast episode description below. So I'm Callum Williams, joined by my payment expert colleague Kieran O'Connor, and we're going to be taking a little look at the new authorised push payment fraud rules that were introduced last Monday. Kieran, I'm not sure if you've been a victim of APP fraud. I had a little problem in Budapest this year.
Right, what was that about then?
ATM took too much. I only asked for £20 and looked at my online banking the same night, and it was about 200 and something odd.
Oh my
which
God.
Just didn't seem right, but I got that one cleared. Have you not had any fraud issues in your in recent years?
No fraud issues. Some attempts, I think, like we're going to talk about in this episode. Some people trying to say that they're someone they're not and get money off me. You usually get the one like, "Hi, it's Mum. I'm stuck. Can I have some money?" Yeah,
you see all types of them, don't you? But so first, Kieran, can you just give us the listeners an overview of what APP fraud is and why it's becoming one of the most prevalent fraud methods in the UK today?
Yeah, so we've covered it a lot over on Payment Expert the last couple of weeks, and it's definitely a hot topic in the payments industry. So first of all, as you mentioned, APP fraud stands for authorised push payment fraud, which pretty much consists of individuals being deceived into transferring funds to fraudsters who are pretending to be people that they know usually, or also just other companies that they might deal with. A pretty shocking statistic that has been making the rounds for the past couple of months is that UK consumers were defrauded out of 460 million in 2023, which is quite a bit. And sort of what's been going on is the emergence of AI hasn't helped this. You've got deep fakes, which we'll talk about later on in the episode, and also social media, which is quite unregulated, really. Mm-hmm. This seems to be the foundation of where most of this fraud takes place.
Yeah, because there's so many social media platforms now. You have obviously the well-established ones like Facebook, Twitter, X, as we should call it now, I guess. Telegram is seemingly becoming like a hotbed for fraud and all types of various other stuff. So it's definitely becoming the most prevalent fraud method that I can remember in quite some time. But so the Payment Systems Regulator, they introduced these last Monday, 7th of October, the new rules on APP fraud. Essentially, UK payment firms are now obligated to reimburse victims of APP fraud with compensation capped at £85,000, with the PSR covering 99% of all claimed amount. If the claims exceed the 85,000 cap and are not reimbursed, companies can raise their case with the Financial Ombudsman Service, which has a compensation limit of £430,000, and they'll look at each case individually, and then it's a free of service charge, so companies can go through this process if 85,000 cap is exceeded. There is quite some history with these new rules as well. I know the payments industry has pushed back quite a bit. I mean, the £85,000 cap was originally it was 415,000, and so the backlash, Kieran, has obviously been they've done the job really, haven't they, the payments industry, of kind of letting their voice be heard and getting it back down to 85,000, right? Yeah,
there's been a lot of backlash about these rules which go into play. I mean, the first one was that when they first brought in, it was 415,000 max reimbursement, and that would be shared 50-50 between the sending and the receiving firm. So I'm not good at maths, but let's say it's like 200,000 each maximum. Now, most fraud that's committed in this APP fraud, I believe, doesn't really get over 85,000, which is the cap now. So the big argument that they had was, why are we sort of putting this massive limit on when usually the fraud cases aren't going to get to that? If anything, we're just sort of encouraging maybe fraudsters themselves to fake that they're being frauded, or people to take advantage of this system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's very rare that you ask someone who's pretending to be somebody asking for 100 grand, like your mortgage isn't been paid, you owe 100 grand. Like, I think a lot more customers and consumers are becoming a lot more privy and a lot more protected also when it comes to these type of cases. Calls have also been made to delay Monday's launch, which the payments industry didn't get their own way this time. It's now integrated into regulation, and now firms must follow these rules. I am sure that the Payment Systems Regulator has called on for any industry collaboration on some of the rules moving forward. But going back to some of the good and the bad, Kieran, what more reaction have you heard from some of these payment companies that we've been speaking to? And is it good, is it bad, or is it a mixed bag, really? Yeah,
it's definitely a mix of opinions, I'd say. You've got a lot of payment firms sort of taking the route of, let's get on with it. The rules are in now. We fought back before they were in place. We tried to get them delayed till next year, but they're in the PSR aren't moving anywhere, and they're here, so we got to deal with it. On the flip side of that, there are some people who are still fighting the fight against them. Big issues which they've raised, and what the argument has now turned into, is how social media platforms have sort of avoided any regulation. Because, as we said, if someone looks to reimburse from fraud, it'll be the receiving and the sending PSP, which will have to reimburse 50-50. The social media platform which the fraud may have originated from have absolutely no financial responsibility. So a lot of payments firms aren't happy with that. But on the flip side of that, social media platforms have noticed that these arguments are coming about and thought, well, we better do something. So earlier this week, Meta announced that it had expanded an information sharing partnership with two leading UK retail banks, which are NatWest Group and Metro Bank. And these have been working with Meta on information sharing, looking to prevent fraud and work on, I think it's Meta's initiative, which they've launched pretty much off the backlash of all these payments companies. This initiative, while looking good, isn't really being welcomed by a lot of PSPs who still say that there should be more done. Woody Malouf, I think he pronounced his name right, who's head of financial account Revolut, put out quite a bold quote saying, "These plans are baby steps, when what the industry really needs is giant leaps forward. Victims and financial institutions still ultimately bear the cost. These platforms share no responsibility in reimbursing victims, and so they have no incentive to do anything about it. A commitment to data sharing, albeit needed, simply isn't good enough." Yeah, that's quite a bold statement really there, because I think you look at social media platforms. I mean, Meta, for instance, is one of the big tech companies, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they've constantly fought and went back and forth with regulators in terms of data sharing. And obviously Mark Zuckerberg was in court a few years ago, wasn't he, regarding stuff like this. But when it pertains to payments as well, I think you're seeing a lot of fraud within some of these social media affiliated shops, like your TikTok shop or your Instagram shop, where it's not really APP fraud. It's more or less scams and fake goods, fake services, stuff like that, where they're kind of targeting young adults, aren't they? Even children at some point. So I think the more oversight with these social media platforms could be introduced. Do I think it'll happen? Not really, no, because I think they would need a completely revamped and new framework for social media oversight to pertain to payments as well. And then it's all about linking that framework with the payments framework. And it'll just take a long time for that to integrate if it does. But Kieran, I'll probably give my opinion on this first, and then I'll leave the rest up to you. Yeah. So, I believe if this will reduce or potentially
increase or reduce APP fraud, these new rules? I think the new rules, of course, will benefit the customer because you're being reimbursed within 5 days and of making a successful claim. Also, the new rules will also be covered 99% by the regulator, so it gives the customer peace of mind knowing they'll be reimbursed. For companies, obviously, like we mentioned, I can see frustration with the new rules as these may actually see an uptick in fraud cases, especially if fraudsters catch wind of, the 85k cap, right? I mean, you're going to start seeing a lot more fraudsters maybe taking advantage of this. More manual processing as well for the companies' fraud. It takes a lot of time for these companies to manually process this. And then when you take into account integrating some new digital services, anti-fraud solutions, they can also take time to integrate as well. So, Kieran, I know, touching on technology as well, I know AI is causing a huge problem in this regard as well, right?
Yeah, so obviously AI, you can't get away from it, it seems. We was at the Payment Expert Summit the other week in Lisbon, and there was a lot of talks about AI there. And when I went to Money 2020, me and yourself, Callum, there was a lot of talks about AI. You can't seem to get rid of it at the minute. It's the hot topic. But AI, the funny thing about AI in this case is that it's being used on both sides to prevent and combat fraud as well as sort of commit fraud. But as always, the bad actors are always a step in front when it comes to any technology, as people who are fighting fraud need to see what they're doing. First of all, fraud has to be committed in a certain way for you then to think, right, how do we prevent this from happening again? So they're always one step ahead. The sort of ways we're seeing AI being used more and more is from its deepfake capabilities. Now, this isn't just videos of Donald Trump making strange announcements or things. It's also people using voices, which they can gather. If they can gather your dad's or mum's voice from some sort of phone call, they could then play a clip or turn it into a voice message of their own with that voice. So it's really, really sophisticated. Sort of on that, do I think that these rules will increase or decrease APP fraud? I think education has a real part to play in all this, and I know a lot of people we spoke to, that's always one of their messages, that the payment system and the social media side have to educate people on APP fraud and what to look out for. But I don't think there'll be a dramatic reduction in fraud rates just from these rules. One advantage I would say for the consumer is that now PSPs are being obligated to reimburse the victims. The money, they will always receive the money that's lost to a certain extent. But as you can imagine, the frustration from PSPs is because they're not their customers, which quite rightly, it's quite scary for them. I know there was a lot of talks about when it was above 400,000 the max cap, that a lot of companies were worried that this could bankrupt them, really. If you get a series of massive fraud reimbursement rates, they could face bankruptcy. So I don't think it'll have a major effect on APP fraud, but it will improve the life of victims who get caught out by these bad actors.
Yeah, especially when talking about the smaller payment companies as well, obviously coming from off the back of COVID as well, that those effects are still lingering. So the new APP fraud rules are still in their infancy. They've only been implemented this week. So if you want to hear more about the progression of APP fraud and what is being done to prevent it, then stay tuned on Payment Expert. I'm sure we've got some great commentary on that. But that is the end for part one for now. But stay tuned, because Jessica Welman and Lucía Mouriño will be calling in from Las Vegas to talk about their experience at G2E.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Hey everyone, welcome back to iGaming Daily. I am Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas. I'm joined by Lucía Mouriño, VP Relationships LATAM, and we are living it up in Las Vegas. When I say living it up, I mean we are kind of exhausted because last night was a party. You want to take the reins, Lou, and what happened last night?
Well, first of all, I think this is becoming a thing of us recording something at G2E. So
I know, I like this.
I love this. And you know what? This is an upgrade because we actually have a setup right now. And we usually are in a random corner recording. And right now, yeah, it's great. But about the party. So we moved from Beer Park to the Marquee and the Cosmo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as everyone knows, that's an iconic venue. We had the cabanas. And we had a pool, and apparently someone jumped on the pool.
Yeah, I saw that pool and knew that was going to happen. It's hot here. It's 100 degrees. So.
Yeah, and it's very dry, very dry. So, yeah, at the beginning of the night when people were in India and we were talking about that, and we said, who's going to be that person? And it happened, but I missed it. But there's always next time, I guess.
Yeah, there's next time. And there's SBC Americas, which was kind of the whole point of the party, was to really hit home that we are going so big in May in Fort Lauderdale with a co-hosted, co-located event of the LATAM conference and our North America conference that used to be in the Meadowlands. People excited for it?
Yeah, they're very excited about it. We know that there's interest around both regions, so it doesn't have to be exclusively about one being interested in the other one. It's just about being in one place where you can see everything that's going on in both. And yeah, like you said, it's going to be much bigger. We're going to expect 10,000 people at the Broward County Convention Center. Said it right. So we're moving from New Jersey to Fort Lauderdale, and then we're moving from the Hard Rock to the Convention Center. And yeah, we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the land-based industry, which is obviously huge both in the US and in Latin. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I will be honest, I have not had too much time to look forward because this is a hectic time for me, and I've been very busy running around. In fact, this is probably the first time I've seen you for more than 10 minutes. The entire time. I know you haven't gotten to see much conference content, but I've been going to content and talking to people, and the word of the conference is sweeps. Everybody getting into the sweep space, people very upset that the sweep space is growing. It's the new DFS plus. Everybody has very strong opinions and very contentious thoughts on them. Daniel Wallach, the gaming attorney, put a thread on Twitter yesterday that was interesting. I have some quibbles with his argument, but again, I'm not a lawyer. He is. There was a sweeps panel that I love. Don't you love when a panel fights?
I love it. If there's drama, I want to be there for it.
Oh, you miss drama. There were two kind of pro sweeps and three kind of anti-sweeps, and just really contentious arguing about, I think it would take 45 minutes for me to kind of get into the weeds of the legal argument, but there's just a lot of legal minutia on this one. And I think the point that I found the most resonant was my friend Matt Kaufman, who works for Eilers and Krychek, was on the panel, and he's like, listen, we missed the boat on DFS. We tried to crack down on it. We didn't get involved in it. And now look at what our landscape looks like. It's one thing if these two companies rule sports betting. These two companies are also the number 1 and 2 in online casino. And it's weird that we have traditional casino companies that I think really understand casino and they're not dominating. So he's just I hope that we don't make the same mistake again. There's room for maybe some of these companies to think about going into sweeps, and maybe that's the answer versus trying so hard to shut it down. Have you had a chance to talk shop with anyone, or you've just been working on the party all day?
Yeah, working on the party, but talking about sweepstakes, can't remember which company it was, but here at the Venetian, there's a huge sign that says do you want to get into sweepstakes? Have you seen it?
I haven't.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's one of the biggest ones that I've seen. It's somewhere around the expo. And I think that proves that the interest is there for some of them. So, yeah.
I'm shocked, too, because, G2E is an AGA supported event, and the AGA, they had a policy paper or a policy stance come out on sweeps that it was somewhat negative. I think it's tricky for them because a lot of these big game suppliers supply social games, and they have interests on both sides of things in a way that some of the operators don't. But I think we will continue to monitor, continue to see what happens. But yeah, if it's any indication, it's quickly growing at a time where everything else I heard was not only are we probably not getting anything passed in 2025, it's probably a long shot to even get anything passed in 2026. So, yeah, it's not the best news. So that's a bit of a downer, but we'll leave on an up note that we're excited for Americas. We had a great party, and you got LATAM in a couple weeks, so I'm going to let you go and rest because you're going to need every minute of it before you get on a plane again. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.